$105,000 per Bitcoin. That's the price of Bitcoin as of today, December 16, 2024. Now we're going to answer 3 questions on this video. How much will Bitcoin be at the end of this month? How much will Bitcoin be by the end of 2025? And when and how will we hit $1 million per Bitcoin? So let's start with the first question. How much will Bitcoin be by the end of this month, December 2024? Now, if you look at the historical data on the Bitcoin monthly returns on the year of the halving, it usually gives a return between 30% up to 46.9%. So the 30% was in year 2016, and in 2020, it gave a return of 46.9%. So just to do a quick computation of how much it'll be by the end of December, we can actually just look at the monthly returns and compute from there. So we ended November at around $96,500 per Bitcoin. Now we multiply that by a low of 30% for this month, and we get about $125,000 per Bitcoin. What if we look for the median between 2016 and 2020's average return on Bitcoin, and we can compute it at 38% return by the end of this month? And that'll bring us to $133,000 per Bitcoin. So for the end of this month, December 2024, we can look at Bitcoin anywhere between $125,000 to $133,000. Now the next question, how much will Bitcoin be by the end of 2025? And to do a quick computation of how much Bitcoin will be by the end of 2025, we can actually compute based on the average quarterly returns of Bitcoin. So if you look at the quarterly chart, you're going to see that Bitcoin returns an average of 56% for the first quarter, 26% for the second quarter, 6% for the third quarter, and 86.89% for the fourth quarter. So based on that, assuming we end the year at $125,000, by the first quarter, if we're looking at an average return of 56%, we can expect Bitcoin to be at $195,000 by the first quarter. And then by the second quarter, we can add another 26.89%, which will bring us to $248,000 per Bitcoin. Then we'll add another 6% by the third quarter, which brings us to $263,000 per Bitcoin. Now, by the end of the year, 2025, which is the fourth quarter, and in this case, just to be conservative, we can use the median return rather than the average return of 86%. The median return is only 57%. So at a 57% return, that'll bring us to $413,000 per Bitcoin. But if we actually use the average return of 86.89%, then we're looking at Bitcoin hitting about $490,000 to $500,000 per Bitcoin. And some of you may actually think that it's a little bit too high for Bitcoin by 2025. But then again, if you look at the stock to flow chart that Plan B actually created, we should be at $1.27 million per Bitcoin by the end of next year. But then again, if you look at the price of Bitcoin compared to the stock to flow chart, it looks like the stock to flow chart is actually broken, and we're not going to hit $1.27 million per Bitcoin by the end of next year. So it depends on which school of thought you follow in this case. So now let's look at how and when Bitcoin will hit $1 million per Bitcoin. Let's first dispel some misconceptions. Now, I know some of you are thinking that for Bitcoin to hit $1 million per Bitcoin, that means that we should have $19 trillion of money flowing into Bitcoin to be able to hit the $1 million mark. That's actually a misconception, and it's also an inaccurate way of computing for the price of Bitcoin. Because the relationship between the price of Bitcoin and its market cap is correlational, not causational. That means that the increase in market cap does not cause the price of Bitcoin to go up. It's just correlational, where the market cap is just a computation based on the price of Bitcoin multiplied by the total supply of Bitcoin of 21 million Bitcoins. So I hope that makes sense on why the market cap does not dictate the price of Bitcoin. It's just another way of interpreting the price of Bitcoin and looking at the total data in a different perspective. So there are several factors to consider for Bitcoin to be able to hit $1 million. And it actually depends on the amount of money flowing into Bitcoin and at what price Bitcoin holders will be willing to let go of their Bitcoin to sell it to a buyer. So how much money will it really take for Bitcoin to be able to reach $1 million? So if you look at the top Bitcoin analysts, they're actually talking about this thing called the Bitcoin multiplier. And this multiplier actually holds true for all assets. it means that the money that flows into any asset like Bitcoin will have a multiplier effect on the price of Bitcoin and the total market cap. And by the way, I tried looking all over the internet to find out if there was an exact formula to be able to figure out what the multiplier is for Bitcoin for it to hit $1 million. And I couldn't find the exact formula. So what I did is I looked at historical data from the past year to be able to come up with a multiplier that makes sense to see how much money it will take to actually flow into Bitcoin for Bitcoin to hit $1 million. So what I did is I looked at several key points in Bitcoin's price action in 2024. Number one, I looked at the price of Bitcoin when its market cap grew by $250 billion in 1 month. That's between May 2 and June 6. So in May 2, the market cap of Bitcoin was $1.15 trillion. And by June 6, it was $1.4 trillion. So it went up by $250 billion. Now, when it went up by $250 billion, if you look at this chart over here, I actually added up the total amount of dollars that flowed into Bitcoin between the periods of May 2 up to June 6, 2024. And it turns out that the inflow that time was about $4.3 billion. So if you look at it this way, the $4.3 billion that flowed in from the Bitcoin ETFs resulted in a 250 billion increase in its market cap, which is about a 57 times multiplier. Next, I looked at another key point between November 7 and December 9. And the market cap of Bitcoin went from $1.5 trillion up to $2 trillion by December 9, with the price of Bitcoin going from $75,000 up to $101,000 per Bitcoin. So if you look at it, the market cap grew by $500 billion or $500 billion. Now, how much money flowed into Bitcoin during that period? So I added up all the BTC ETF inflows during this period, and the total is $9.82 billion that flowed into Bitcoin during that time period. Now, if you divide 500 billion by 9.82 billion, that's approximately a 51 times multiplier for the money that flowed into Bitcoin to the actual increase in the market cap. So now, based on that 50 times multiplier, how long will it take and when can we expect Bitcoin to hit $1 million? So what we need to do now is find out how long will it take for us to add another $19 trillion to the market cap of Bitcoin. Now, based on a 51x multiplier, that means we only need $373 billion to flow into Bitcoin for Bitcoin to hit $1 million per Bitcoin. Now, how long will it take to get $373 billion flowing into Bitcoin? Now, if you look at the average money flowing into Bitcoin on a daily basis through the Bitcoin ETFs, it looks like we're averaging about $327 million per day flowing into Bitcoin. And if you divide $373 billion by $327 million, it comes out to about 1,140 days for us to hit $1 million per Bitcoin. Now, if you divide it in years, based on only 5 days a week where money is flowing into Bitcoin, it'll take about 4 years and 4 months before Bitcoin hits $1 million. And coincidentally, that's actually the peak of the next halving cycle of Bitcoin, which is around 2029 to 2030. So based on this computation, it fits perfectly with the Bitcoin halving cycle. But then again, the assumptions I made is that the Bitcoin ETF flows will be constant at about $327 million per Bitcoin. And I haven't included the other catalysts that could actually add more money flowing into Bitcoin for 2025 and the coming years, such as the central banks of different countries, starting with the United States, who's already planning a Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Fund. And if that Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Fund actually happens, that's going to add another $100 billion of money flowing into Bitcoin based on $100,000 per Bitcoin. And if you look at the total number that we're looking at here of $373 billion to be able to make Bitcoin hit $1 million per Bitcoin, the US alone will cover just under 30% of the requirement to be able to hit $1 million per Bitcoin. And if you add that with the fact that the Bitcoin ETFs will most likely start to flow in at a faster rate than the current rate of $327 million per day. Then you add other central banks of other countries like Russia, China, and all other countries coming into Bitcoin, plus MicroStrategy and all other companies coming into Bitcoin within the next few years, you could see an acceleration of the flow of money into Bitcoin, which could drive the price of Bitcoin higher at a much faster rate. So is it possible that we can see Bitcoin hitting $1 million by the end of 2025? I think that's possible. So the question is, how much money needs to flow into Bitcoin on a daily basis, on average, for it to hit $1 million per Bitcoin? Bitcoin needs at least an inflow of about $1.4 billion a day for Bitcoin to hit $1 million per Bitcoin by the end of 2025. But what if the flow of Bitcoin was only at $327 million per Bitcoin? How much would Bitcoin be by the end of 2025 based on this? If we only average $327 million per day going into Bitcoin for the entire 2025, that means there would be $85 billion flowing into Bitcoin by 2025. Now, if we look at a 50x multiplier, that would bring the market cap of Bitcoin to $4.3 trillion. And if you divide it by the 21 million Bitcoins, that brings the price of Bitcoin at around $206,000 per Bitcoin by the end of 2025. What do you guys think? Do you agree with me or disagree? And what do you think will be the price of Bitcoin by the end of 2025? And when do you think Bitcoin will hit $1 million? I'd love to hear from all of you guys. Please write all your comments in the comment section below. And if you like content like this, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on that notification bell so you're notified of my latest videos. Thanks so much, everyone. This is Chris Tan. I'll see you guys on the next video.